You have come here today because something within you is urging, a sense of unease you may not yet have named. Perhaps it is exhaustion to the point of collapse, when mind and heart seem to shatter together under invisible pressure, or perhaps it is the burden of emotions that are not entirely your own, yet seep into every breath so that you feel the pain, the fear, the longing, and even the rage of others as though they were etched into your very skin, like wounds that have never fully healed. You may have heard someone advise that your sensitivity is a curse. Don't bleed for other people's problems. Don't be so weak as to endure everyone else's emotions, or be tougher. Don't let yourself fall apart. But do not be quick to blame yourself for feeling too deeply, for that very wound is not your end, but the beginning of a new journey, your journey to become your own warrior. Life rarely forges a warrior from comfort. A true warrior is born only when your soul chooses not to submit, refusing to be crushed by pain, and instead uses trauma as a springboard for inner strength. From childhood onward, to survive in homes rife with turmoil, you quietly honed an emotional antenna. Hearing your mother's quickened breath before her words of reproach, sensing your father's rising anger in his voice before the door slammed. At times when you felt powerless, unable to stem the flow of tears or the surge of anger from those you loved, you could only feel and could not act. That sensation, deprived of the inner power to shape events, became a psychological wound, a silent trauma. Yet what we least expect is that the very gift that seemed to make us vulnerable is in fact the key to unlocking our potential. Empathy was not given to destroy you, but to awaken you to a profound connection with other souls. You are not alone in carrying communal pain. This pain exists in the collective, and you are the bridge between its broken pieces. When you recognize yourself as the junction between others' emotions and your own capacity for healing, you will understand that your sensitivity is not weakness, but the most refined weapon in your inner arsenal. Now, looking back on your journey, you may see scars that once seemed meaningless as the very marks of courage. Every time you allow yourself to fully feel another's pain, you affirm your inner strength, that you have the courage to face and transform it. Believe that a wound is not the final boundary, but the starting point for your greatest victory, conquering yourself. Imagine the great healer Chiron, that wise centaur of myth who bore an incurable wound, yet became the most revered physician of antiquity. Picture Christ upon the cross, carrying the world's suffering in his body, transforming agony into redemption. These figures embody the archetype of the wounded healer, one who transmutes personal suffering into a source of healing for others. You too share in that lineage, not as someone defeated by pain, but as one who carries wounds so that you might bring solace and strength to those around you. To move from injured soul to inner warrior, the first step is to face your own shadow, the hidden, disowned parts of yourself you have long feared or repressed. For the empath, the shadow often takes the form of anger you dare not express, a quiet selfishness you deny, or a hunger for power you swore you would never embrace. You have spent years identifying as the compassionate one, the listener, the bearer of burdens. You wore kindness like armor, shielding yourself from being labeled cruel or unfeeling. Yet, beneath that noble facade, your forbidden rage lay chained in the dark recesses of your psyche, a power you denied at the cost of your own wholeness. Refusing to acknowledge that buried anger is akin to denying the very heat that forges steel. The true warrior is not made by retreating from inner fire, but by drawing the sword and letting its blade pierce illusion. This sword is not wielded in aggression against the world. It is the sword of clarity, severing the false ties that bind you to pain and false obligation. When you summon the courage to name your anger, to say, "Yes, I feel betrayed," or "Yes, I deserve respect," you draw your sword. In that moment, You reclaim a fragment of yourself that once hid in shame. Engaging with your shadow need not mean surrendering to destructiveness. Rather, it is the act of integrating these disowned parts so they become allies instead of enemies. Your anger, when owned, becomes the energy that protects healthy boundaries. Your rational desire to prioritize your own needs is not selfishness, it is self-preservation. Your buried longing for influence can transform into the quiet confidence to speak up when injustice arises. By welcoming these once feared aspects, you transform the raw metal of your pain into a tempered blade of integrity, unyielding yet compassionate. As you practice this alchemy, remember that you are following in the footsteps of Chiron and Christ. You do not abandon your wound, you refine it. The shadow does not vanish. It becomes the source of your greatest power to heal. When you stand firm in your truth with sword in hand and heart open, you become both shield and beacon for others. You no longer collapse at the first hint of conflict, nor do you harden into indifference. Instead, you stand as a wounded healer, warrior, embodying compassion and strength, ready to guide those who still tremble in the dark toward their own healing and empowerment. Imagine yourself in the quiet of night, when the world outside fades and your mind begins to weave its own stories. You find yourself running through flames, chased by shadowy creatures, locked in battles that leave your heart pounding even after you wake. These are not meaningless hallucinations. They are the urgent vocabulary of your unconscious, calling you to stop fleeing and to pay attention. The monster you face in your dream is not an enemy sent to punish you. It is the raw, repressed power within you that has long been exiled. The battlefield is not the distant landscape, but the terrain of your own inner life. When you dare to stand your ground in the dream, turn to face the creature, instead of fleeing, you reclaim pieces of your soul that have been scattered by fear and avoidance. Each repeated nightmare, each vision of fire or conflict is an invitation rather than a sentence. Your psyche is whispering, "Stop running. I want you to listen and to act." In that moment of courageous confrontation, you no longer remain prey to the thirsty ghosts of other people's needs, those who draw on your sensitivity until you feel hollow. In waking life, if you do not hold fast to the reservoir of power inside you, others will sense its presence and attempt to draw it out. You may call this love, duty, or sacrifice, but deep down, you know the emptiness that follows. You give and give until your boundaries dissolve, and still they ask for more. Yet a true warrior is not one who fights every battle, but one who discerns where to invest their energy most effectively. By learning from your dreams, you understand that the power you fear is the very force you need to create healthy boundaries and to serve your true purpose. The darkness of these dream visions teaches you an essential truth. If you do not protect yourself, you will become the very vampire you once feared. You will drain others not through malice, but through the compulsion to prove your worth by endless giving. In that scenario, you become both martyr and executioner of your own spirit. The dream monster, then, is a mirror showing you the danger of unchecked selflessness. It is a call to reclaim your strength, to become selective about which battles you fight. Begin by noticing the recurring symbols in your sleep. The fire that surrounds you may represent the intensity of emotions you have suppressed. The monsters may embody aspects of your anger or desire for recognition that have been buried. When you wake, take a few moments in quiet reflection, perhaps with a journal or a trusted friend, and ask yourself, what part of me is this dream asking me to acknowledge? What boundary did I fail to maintain today? Each time you heed this call, You take back a fragment of your power. You learn to step forward in life with discernment. You can still feel compassion without being consumed. You can still offer kindness without surrendering your well-being. In this way, the dream battle becomes your training ground, forging you into a warrior who does not wage war on the world, but protects the sanctity of your inner kingdom. Remember, the monsters in the night are not here to destroy you. They are guides showing you the path from helplessness to sovereignty. When you face them courageously, dream by dream, you remake yourself into someone who stands unshakable, with the clarity to choose your battles and the integrity to safeguard your own soul. Your innate sensitivity becomes your strongest armor the moment you make peace with your shadow. When you turn toward your buried anger, instead of collapsing under someone else's expectations, the tremor that once left you paralyzed becomes the tremor that roots you in your own truth. When you acknowledge your own self-interest, not as selfishness, but as a rightful claim to your own well-being, you no longer fall prey to those who demand your endless giving as proof of your worth. This is the transformation from the fragile empath into the immovable warrior. Think of the archetype of the warrior not merely as a slayer of foes, but as a servant of a higher order like Saint Michael the Archangel, who wields a flaming sword not out of malice but to restore cosmic balance, or Mars in Roman myth, who channels his martial might in defense of justice and order. In the same way, your anger, once tamed and owned, becomes a clarifying force that cuts through confusion and restores your equilibrium. You do not lash out indiscriminately. Instead, you direct your energy with precision, severing only those ties that corrode your spirit. To forge this inner armor, you must integrate both light and shadow. The tenderness that makes you empathic is not discarded. Rather, it is tempered by boundaries that you learn to draw firmly and compassionately. Boundaries are not barriers to love, but the sacred lines that keep love from drowning you. They allow you to offer your heart fully without being pulled under by another's despair. They ensure that when you extend your hand, you do so freely, not from a place of fear or compulsion. Similarly, your ambition for influence or authority need not be feared as greed. It can be the source of your courage to speak up when injustice arises. By embracing this desire for power, recognizing it as a legitimate hunger for self-respect, you neutralize the fear that once made you recoil at the prospect of claiming space. You begin to see power not as something someone else wields over you, but as a resource you steward on behalf of yourself and those you serve. As you walk this path, your heart learns a new rhythm, a beat of compassion guided by discernment, and a pulse of strength softened by empathy. Your sensitivity no longer hollows you out. It becomes the living conduit through which you bring light to dark places in both yourself and the world. You become neither a victim nor an aggressor, but a guardian of integrity, able to hold suffering without dissolving, and to wield your power without wounding. Over time, you will notice that people respond differently to you. They no longer deplete you with endless demands because they sense the strength that underlies your kindness. They feel the solidity of your presence and understand that true compassion does not require them to drain your resources. Instead, your empathy becomes a beacon. It invites others to stand tall in their own light. In this integration of tenderness and toughness, you embody the paradox of the wounded healer warrior. You are gentle enough to comfort and powerful enough to protect. You know when to stand firm and when to yield, when to speak and when to listen. You carry the whole spectrum of your humanity, light, dark, compassion, and boundary in harmonious balance. This is the heart of your sovereignty, a warrior not of conquest, but of wholeness. Healing does not begin by turning away. It begins when you sit before your wound with reverence, as if it were a sacred text begging to be read. Find a quiet moment, perhaps in the soft glow of morning light or the calm hush of evening, and invite yourself to gently place your attention on that ache, that hollow place within you. Ask yourself, what is this wound trying to reveal? Rather than rushing to intellectualize or fix what hurts, allow the wound to speak in its own language. Through active imagination, a practice as simple as closing your eyes and letting images rise, unbidden observe how the wound appears. It may take the form of a small frightened child, or a bleeding animal, fragile and vulnerable, or a shattered vessel whose pieces clink softly on the inner floor of your mind. Do not judge these images. Do not dissect them. Simply listen. In their wild, raw expression lies the seed of transformation. When you summon the courage to descend into this underworld of your psyche to meet the wounded child, the devouring mother who consumed your joy, or the absent father whose silence echoed in your chest, you awaken a power no external force can match. This is the crucible of alchemy, the lead of suffering transmuted into the gold of wisdom. The true warrior is never forged in ice-cold numbness, but in steel tempered by fire, flexible enough to bend without breaking, yet resolute enough to hold its shape under pressure. As you tend to these inner figures, you may feel waves of sorrow, fear, or anger arise. Welcome them as visitors, not as enemies. Speak inwardly to the frightened child. I see you. You are not alone. Offer a compassionate gesture to the bleeding animal. Your pain is valid. I am here. To the shattered vessel, whisper. Your fragments can be gathered. Together, we can hold them. In these moments of tender witnessing, you create a container large enough to hold your pain without being engulfed by it. Over time, this ritual of honorable attention loosens the grip of past trauma. You begin to recognize that feeling deeply does not doom you to collapse. It is the source of your greatest strength. You learn to move through life carrying your sensitivity like a lantern, illuminating the path for yourself and others, rather than stumbling in darkness. This integration is not a one-time event, but a lifelong dance. You will revisit the underworld again and again, perhaps when a long-buried memory surfaces or when you face a fresh loss. Each descent deepens your resilience. With every return to the surface, you bring back a nugget of understanding, a clarity that reframes your story. In this way, your wound becomes a wellspring, not a prison. You can feel the full weight of grief without drowning. You can indulge in joy without fear of collapse. You can love fiercely, yet maintain the integrity of your own heart. This is the alchemical path, transforming the raw energy of suffering into the liberating gold of presence, compassion, and inner strength. Through it, you do not merely survive your wounds, you transcend them, embodying a warrior's grace that is at once tender and unbreakable. Dreams are the royal road into the unconscious, and for the empath, they often take the shape of overwhelming water floods, raging rivers, and tides that threaten to swallow you whole. You might wake drenched in sweat, your heart pounding, believing you were drowning. Know that this image is no random nightmare. Water symbolizes the collective emotions you have absorbed. If you feel yourself gasping for air in the dream, it is a clear message that in waking life you are suffocating under the weight of others' feelings. Yet there is a profound invitation hidden in that terror. When you decide not to turn and run, when you choose instead to dive into the wave and allow yourself to sink, something miraculous can happen. At the bottom of that inner sea lies a realm you did not expect, pockets of air, shafts of light, and a hidden treasure guarded by serpents and dragons. This treasure is your buried power, the spiritual resource you have long sought but believed lost. The serpent that coils around the ruins is not there to scare you. It is an archetype of transformation, the keeper of your soul's gold. It stands watch over the prize you must earn. Only those brave enough to meet their deepest fear, only those willing to go beyond the instinct to flee, are worthy of lifting this treasure into consciousness. Many empaths live split lives. On one side, the compassionate self that wants to heal and nurture. On the other, the shadow self that harbors resentment, rage, and the desire to abandon or destroy. You have feared the shadow, convinced that embracing anger or self-interest would make you become cruel. But true cruelty arises not from feeling darkness, but from denying it, letting it fester beneath your awareness until it erupts in unconscious behaviors that hurt yourself or others. To begin integration, try active imagination. In a calm, seated moment, close your eyes and invite your shadow forward. Allow it to grumble, mourn, accuse you of wasting your life in endless service. Don't silence or shame it, listen respectfully. Beneath the lash of anger lies a truth. You have often abandoned your own needs, betraying yourself in the name of love. When you acknowledge and embrace the shadow's demand for respect and self-preservation, you dissolve the inner conflict that has kept you fractured. From this union emerges a new power, a strength that does not fear confrontation or collapse under guilt. Your transformation is not a loss of compassion, but the forging of your empathy into tempered steel. You can bleed, yet remain unbroken. You can love deeply, yet retain your own boundaries. You can enter communal pain without being consumed. In this integrated state, the empath warrior does more than heal themselves. They become living proof of the journey from wound to power. Others see that sensitivity and sovereignty need not be opposing forces. They witness how one who once nearly drowned in emotion can surface, treasure in hand, and shine that light into the world. By embracing both light and dark within, you carry forward the legacy of the wounded healer. You stand as a beacon for those who still tremble in the tide, showing that the path through fear and repression leads to the rediscovery of your truest, mightiest self. In that alchemy, your greatest gift becomes not just what you heal in yourself, but how you inspire healing in others. The victim archetype can be irresistibly seductive for the empath because it offers a crystal clear identity. I am in pain, therefore I exist. By embracing the role of the wounded, you draw sympathy, apologies, and endless validation for your stasis. Yet the throne of the victim is a gilded cage. It promises safety, but in truth it binds you with chains of self-pity. When you cling to the story, I am the wound, you willingly forsake your power of choice. The power to decide whether to treat your suffering as proof of life's unfairness or to transform it into the fuel of growth and resilience. The warrior within you chooses the latter path. Rather than idolizing your wound, you acknowledge it without identifying entirely with it. You recognize that you have been hurt, but you are not your hurt. This simple yet profound distinction unlocks freedom. You can see suffering as a testament to hardship, or as a forge that tempers your spirit into unbreakable steel. The warrior's choice is always to become stronger. This transformation does not follow a straight line. It unfolds in undulating waves. You may believe you have triumphed, only to find yourself kneeling once more at the altar of old pain. Do not despair. Each seeming setback is an invitation to descend deeper and fortify your foundation. In alchemical language, the nigredo, the dark night of the soul, must precede the albedo, the purifying light. You must re-enter your darkness repeatedly, not as punishment, but as initiation into greater depths of strength. Empaths often resist this process because they long to bypass the chaos of shadow and leapfrog to enlightenment. Yet what is repressed never truly disappears. It returns with compounded force. If you deny your anger, it projects onto others, and you find yourself surrounded by sudden bursts of rage. If you reject your hunger for power, you become vulnerable to manipulation and silent envy. The unconscious will not be deceived. It demands wholeness, which includes the parts you once disowned. Only when you embrace both light and shadow, your boundless compassion alongside the fiery core of your fury, does the warrior fully emerge. This is the secret that makes the empath's ascension unstoppable. It is not a single event, but a miraculous process of spiraling self-realization. With each cycle, you reclaim more of your authentic power, integrating heartbreak and hope, tenderness and tenacity. As this integration deepens, you will discover a new equilibrium. You can extend empathy without collapsing under its weight. You can assert healthy boundaries without feeling guilty. You can love fiercely, yet protect your own well-being. You can engage with the world's suffering without losing yourself in it. Over time, your life becomes a living testament to the cycle of transformation. Friends and family will notice that while your sensitivity remains as keen as ever, your presence is now anchored in unwavering strength. You no longer seek refuge on the victim's throne, for you have found sovereignty in your own heart. In this way, the empath moves beyond mere survival of pain and into mastery of it. Your wound, once held as proof of defeat, becomes the chalice from which you draw wisdom. Your story shifts from one of perpetual suffering to one of ongoing triumph, a triumph that ripples outward, inspiring others to embrace their own shadows and rise as the warriors they were always meant to be. Empaths often fear solitude because they have defined themselves through connection to others. They feel adrift without a web of relationships to anchor their identity. Yet solitude is the crucible in which the inner warrior is forged. It is here, in the silent workshop of the soul, that you meet your inner sage, the wise elder within, and encounter your anima or animus, the unconscious counterpart yearning to be acknowledged. In solitude, you are free from the emotional currents of those around you, and instead you turn your attention inward to explore the landscape of your own psyche. When you consciously embrace moments alone, whether it's sitting quietly with a cup of tea as dawn breaks, or taking a solitary walk through autumn leaves, you step into a sacred space. In that space, you discover that you are more than the roles you have played and more than the scars you have carried. You are a soul on a journey of individuation, moving toward wholeness by uniting fragmented parts of yourself. Your compassion does not vanish, it deepens. No longer driven by a frantic need to rescue or fix, your compassion transforms into the humble art of witnessing. You become the keeper of a compassionate presence that invites others to meet their own inner strengths. This is why empaths can become rulers of two realms, much like Persephone in Greek myth, pulled into the underworld by Hades and later returning to reign as queen of both the living and the dead. You too learn to descend into the depths of your own darkness, then rise again stronger and more sovereign. When you accept the death of your old identity, whether as peacemaker, caretaker, or people pleaser, you create the fertile ground in which the warrior can take root. Like the phoenix reborn from ashes, You allow what no longer serves you to burn away so that new life may emerge. Solitude teaches you the art of letting go. Letting go is not loss. It is a conscious choice about what must perish for the rest of you to thrive. By allowing your old self, the self that sacrificed without limit, to be laid to rest, you give yourself permission to grieve. This ritual mourning honors your past without letting it dictate your future. It acknowledges the gifts and lessons of your former role, while refusing to be imprisoned by them. As this process unfolds, you will find that your solitude is not a void, but a womb of transformation. In this quiet sanctuary, the inner sage offers guidance, and the anima, or animus, reveals hidden strengths and unmet needs. These inner encounters empower you to integrate disowned qualities, your fierce anger, your rightful claim to autonomy into a unified self. You emerge not hollowed out, but whole, carrying the balanced tension between light and shadow. In time, you will no longer dread being alone. Instead, you will seek solitude as a source of renewal. You will learn that true connection flows from the depth of your own centeredness, not from external validation. From this place, you can re-engage the world with a presence that is unwavering yet gentle, a compassion that uplifts without enabling self-sacrifice. Ultimately, the empathetic warrior stands as a testament to what is possible when one faces both darkness and light in solitude. You become living proof that true strength blossoms only when we dare to be alone with our wounds, our wisdom, and our uncharted potential, so that we may return to the world fully reawakened and ready to serve with integrity. Sovereignty is the crown jewel of the warrior's journey, not the power to dominate others, but the mastery of self. Imagine a willow bent in a storm, its supple branches swaying with the wind. An empath without sovereignty feels much like that willow, buffeted by every gust of collective emotion, unable to stand firm in their own center. Yet when you learn to honor your wounds and integrate your shadow, you plant roots that grow deep into the bedrock of your being. You still feel the winds of life, but you no longer snap under their force. Instead, your steady trunk offers shade and shelter. Others find refuge in your calm presence, learning from your example how to stand tall amid life's gales. You are called to be a culture bearer, a bridge between the collective, unconscious, and everyday reality. Your mission extends beyond personal healing. You open a pathway that countless others can follow. In a world fractured by division and mechanized systems that numb the heart, we desperately need empathic warriors. Not the kind who tremble before the flood of collective feeling, but those who gaze into the storm with serene confidence, guiding others by the quiet authority of sovereignty. This process of claiming sovereignty is rarely smooth. Your psyche will test you relentlessly. Old wounds resurface to tempt you back into people-pleasing or self-sacrifice. You may feel the familiar urge to prove your worth by meeting every demand, or the fear that if you stand firm, you will lose love and belonging. But this time, something is different. You sense the sword at your side. It is the truth you have chosen to embody. You hear the whisper of your shadow reminding you, do not betray yourself again. Each moment when you uphold your inner truth, you lay another stone in the fortress of your sovereignty. As boundaries become second nature, you breathe freely, no longer needing to explain or justify your limits. You rest in the knowledge that every no is an act of integrity, not unkindness. You discover that healthy boundaries do not isolate you, but connect you more authentically to others. People respond not with resentment, but with respect, because they sense the solidity of your presence and are invited to claim their own. Becoming a sovereign empath does not mean closing your heart. It means choosing where and how to open it. You learn to hold space for others without sacrificing your well-being. You can walk alongside another's grief without being carried away by it. You can offer counsel without feeling compelled to fix every problem. In this balance, your compassion shines brighter than ever. It becomes the guiding light for those still lost in the shadows. Over time, you notice a ripple effect. Friends, family, even casual acquaintances reflect back a new possibility. That sensitivity need not equate to helplessness. They see you weather challenges with grace, and they begin to trust their own ability to do the same. Your sovereignty becomes a living testament to the alchemy of shadow integration, a proof that true power arises when we embrace every part of ourselves, not just the light. In the end, the sovereign empath stands as both warrior and sage, unyielding in principle, yet infinitely compassionate. You no longer react to life's storms, you rise to meet them. And as you do, you carry forward a legacy, showing the world that sovereignty is not a fortress behind which to hide, but a lighthouse from which to shine. Ultimately, the empath warrior is not only an individual fortress of strength, but a beacon of hope for the wider community. When you stand firm amid chaos, your compassion no longer carries the weight of judgment or compulsion. It becomes a profound empathy woven with integrity. You do not rescue others by doing everything for them. Instead, you hold a sacred space where they may rediscover their own power. This is the highest form of caring, offering presence without overextension, guidance without coercion. By transforming your healed wounds into works of art through your writing, your painting, your speaking, you channel the collective unconscious and invite others to access the same spiritual treasure. When you share your story, you show how raw pain can be alchemized into wisdom. When you illustrate inner landscapes, you map out the pathways that led you through darkness. When you teach or mentor, you guide others to interpret their own dreams and symbols. In doing so, you become a conduit for creative energy, turning personal suffering into universal insight, solitude into guidance, and nocturnal visions into a navigational chart for the soul. This is precisely why the world needs the rise of the empath, not brittle kindness, but the synthesis of power and sensitivity, of healthy boundaries and unconditional love. In an era marked by hastily dispensed advice and mechanical solutions, what people yearn for is a living demonstration that vulnerability and strength are not mutually exclusive. They crave proof that the very sensitivity that once felt like a flaw can become a source of collective transformation. Remember, individuation, the process of becoming your most authentic self, is not a finish line, but a spiral of ongoing evolution. You will advance, sometimes stumble, but always have the opportunity for rebirth. Each moment of reflection, every dream that stirs you awake, each time you choose solitude over distraction, you take another step in this sacred pilgrimage. You no longer see yourself as the fragile empath who once feared every emotional tide, but as a spiritual warrior of sovereignty, a lighthouse guiding lost souls toward the dawn. When you stand in this steadiness, you do more than save yourself. You carve a corridor of light for countless others to follow. Your presence alone reassures someone in despair that they too can endure. Your art reminds another that transformation is possible. Your words unlock understanding in those who have long felt isolated. And in that shared journey, the community itself becomes stronger, more resilient, and more compassionate. So hold fast to your truth. Continue to polish your sword of integrity, sharpen your boundary of discernment, and polish the mirror of empathy through which others catch glimpses of their own divinity. In doing so, you fulfill your highest calling, not only to survive the wounds of life, but to lead a collective healing one fearless step at a time. Your rise is not just personal triumph, it is the dawn of a new pattern in humanity, where sensitivity and sovereignty walk hand in hand, lighting the way out of darkness for us all. When you reach the threshold of awakening, the world around you shifts in unsettling ways. Relationships that once felt secure may now weigh heavily upon your spirit. The roles and identities you adopted, caretaker, peacemaker, healer, may no longer fit like a second skin. This is the moment of crossing the threshold. The old wound begins to fall away like dried bark, and your inner warrior stirs from slumber. Yet this passage is far from gentle. It feels like a chrysalis cracking open in the dark, a birth that demands struggle. Your psyche fights back fiercely, for each death of an old identity summons the fear of loss. Hold your ground. If you withstand the surge of emotions without retreating, you will discover that you have not died, only the outdated mask has been shed. The shadow remains a crucial guide during this upheaval. It unmasks the bindings that keep you chained to self-sacrifice, your addiction to being needed, the compulsive proof of worth through martyrdom. The shadow does not coddle you, it strips you bare, revealing the hidden drivers beneath your compassion. When you dare to look, you realize that much of your supposed empathy was laced with fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of being deemed worthless. Recognizing this is not a condemnation, but a vital step toward integration. It teaches you that empathy is not an unalloyed gift. Every virtue carries its own shadow. This recognition ushers you into a stage of maturity where you choose to feel because you will it, not because you must. In this phase, the empath's dreams transform. No longer flooded by rising waters, they become epic inner battles. You might dream of being pursued by invisible armies, or find yourself wielding a sword you once did not know existed. These visions are not grim portents, but the clarion call of your will. Take up your weapon not to strike others, but to defend your soul's sanctity. When you confront the adversary and see its face mirror your own, you touch the deepest truth. The greatest battle is always waged within. As you resolutely face the inner foe without flinching or retreat, you break the chains of trauma that once held you captive. No longer will you fear conflict. You will speak your truth, even if it plunges the room into silence. You cease living for appearances and instead live for authenticity, even if that authenticity discomforts or alienates others. You may be labeled selfish, cold, or unyielding, but these accusations are projections from those who once fed upon your silence. Standing firm is your only path to revealing your true self. In this newfound sovereignty, you discover that every tremor of fear is met with a steady pulse of courage. Your voice, once hushed to placate others, now echoes with the resonance of inner authority. You no longer hedge your words to avoid rocking the boat. You speak the truth because it is the cornerstone of your being. This is not bravado, but the natural outgrowth of having claimed yourself, wounds and all, as a source of your power. Through this crucible, the empath warrior emerges fully formed, compassionate yet unbreakable, tender yet unwavering. You have faced the darkness, held your weapon at the ready, and refused to betray your own soul. In doing so, you become living proof that genuine strength arises not from suppression of emotion, but from its courageous integration. And in that integration, you not only unlock your own freedom, but light the way for others still ensnared by their shadows. A true warrior is not defined by rebellion alone, but by profound gentleness rooted in inner wholeness. Your kindness is no longer a brittle facade you must don to earn approval. It springs from a deep well within, unshakable and serene. When you embrace someone in the throes of suffering, you do not rush to fix them or erase their pain. Instead, you offer the steadfast presence of your heart, a safe harbor where they can anchor their distress and begin to find their own bearings. This is genuine strength, the capacity to stand unwavering beside another's suffering, giving them the ground from which they may heal on their own terms. It is not about rescuing, but about accompanying, walking with them through their valley rather than carrying them across it. Bearing witness to another's pain is a far cry from bearing their burden. When you attempt to carry someone's suffering for them, you deplete yourself, and they lose the opportunity to reclaim their own power. But when you simply stay present, listening, acknowledging, and reflecting back their inherent resilience, you empower both yourself and the other person. Your compassion becomes a mirror, showing them the strengths they may have forgotten. Words of encouragement, brush strokes on canvas, the cadence of a song, or the wisdom woven into your work all become channels for healing energy. You no longer pour out endlessly. You radiate what you have discovered in the alchemy of your own wounds. This mode of accompaniment also breaks the cycle of unconditional caretaking that can lead to burnout. You cease to be the sponge that soaks up every drop of pain. Instead, you become the pillar of support, firm and reliable, yet flexible where necessary. Others see in you a pathway forward, not a path that skirts around their wounds, but one that leads directly into them, offering passage through which they can emerge renewed. Your life becomes living proof that it is possible to honor suffering without being consumed by it. In these challenging times when isolation deepens and mechanized systems can leave us feeling more like cogs than people, the empath warrior shines as a beacon of hope. You feel deeply not to succumb to despair, but to cultivate understanding that can guide a collective awakening. Your sensitivity, once a source of vulnerability, is now the lens through which you perceive the interconnectedness of all beings. You hold space for pain with such authenticity that others find permission to acknowledge their own. By embodying both gentleness and resolve, you model a new paradigm for human connection, one that transcends the binary of rescuer and victim. You demonstrate that true healing arises not from the eradication of pain, but from the courage to walk alongside it. In doing so, you help break the cycles of violence and the denial of darkness that perpetuate collective suffering. When you stand as this empathic warrior, you offer not just comfort, but an invitation to approach one's own wounds, to bear witness to their truth, and to rise from them fortified with compassion and integrity. In a world starved for genuine empathy, your presence becomes revolutionary. You light the way out of the labyrinth of isolation, showing that the path to solidarity begins with the willingness to hold one another's pain with unwavering love. The rise of the empath warrior is not a fleeting moment of personal triumph, but a ripple that extends through generations. When you stand firmly in your sovereignty, you do more than save your own spirit. You blaze a trail for countless lost souls who follow. You become a culture bearer, a conduit between the collective unconscious and everyday life. By bearing witness to pain rather than bearing its burden for others, you leave footprints in the sand that guide those who come after you. As a culture bearer, you transform your lived experience into healing lore. Your raw emotions become art. Your hard-won insights become teachings. Your life's vision becomes a roadmap for others. The wounds you have survived flow into an endless font of creativity, each scar a story, each heartbeat a drumbeat of resilience. The The darkness you have faced is the ink with which you inscribe your spiritual cartography. Through your writing, your paintings, your music, and your words of counsel, you channel the collective unconscious, helping others tap into their own hidden treasures. Consider how a single poem or painting, born from your wound, can awaken a profound recognition in someone else. I too have felt this. A lecture or workshop you lead can illuminate the path for a fellow seeker, revealing that the chaos of inner life need not be a prison, but a crucible for change. In every creative act, you bear witness not only to your own evolution, but to the potential within every human heart to transcend pain. Yet, this stage of leadership and creation is not without its tests. Old wounds will resurface, tempting you to slip back into the roles of rescuer or victim. You may feel the pull to save others by shouldering their suffering, or to retreat into self-pity when faced with fresh pain. But this time you are armed with a sword that slices through illusion, the sword of boundary. You carry a shield forged in self-respect, the sacred no that protects your inner kingdom. Each moment you choose to stand in truth, each time you refuse to yield your ground, you strengthen the pillars of your sovereignty. Saying no without guilt becomes your natural posture. Moving through chaos without crumbling becomes second nature. You no longer ask permission to exist as your fullest self, nor do you apologize for the boundaries that preserve your well-being. As you continue on this path, you will notice something extraordinary. The energy of your life radiates beyond you. Family, friends, even strangers begin to sense the steady flame of your courage and compassion. They, in turn, find the courage to face their own shadows, to claim their own boundaries, to step into their own sovereignty. In this way, the empath, warrior's reign, is not a solitary crown, but a shared legacy, a communal ascent toward healing and wholeness. In a society that often prizes quick fixes over deep transformation, your emergence as an empath warrior culture bearer demonstrates a different way. It shows that genuine change unfolds through continuous integration of light and dark, through creative expression of pain, and through the unwavering commitment to hold space, both for yourself and for every soul on its journey. This, truly, is the ongoing triumph of the empath warrior, not only to rise above suffering, but to lift an entire community into the light. You will inevitably enter a season of profound upheaval, a final storm, before the clear skies of sovereignty arrive. In this unstable period, relationships once rock solid may fracture, leaving you adrift in unfamiliar waters. The roles you clung to, healer, peacemaker, invisible pillar, may no longer fit, and the comforting myths you told yourself begin to crumble. You may feel bereft, as if the world you built has shifted beneath your feet. This is the moment the chrysalis cracks for the last time, allowing your inner warrior to break free. Your psyche will rise in resistance. Change demands that you confront the death of old illusions. The illusion that saving others guarantees your own safety, and the illusion that your worth lies in being perpetually gentle. These deeply held beliefs are like the brittle shell of the cocoon, familiar but ultimately confining. Let yourself feel the grief that arises when these old truths fall away. Honor that grief as a testament to how bravely you have served in those roles. Yet, even as you mourn, the shadow surges back with renewed force. It dredges up old patterns, the compulsive urge to say yes when you long to say no, the habit of smoothing emotional waves at the expense of your own boundary, the relentless drive to prove your worth through service. In this tempest, it may feel as though the betrayal of self is imminent, and that every step forward is met with 2 steps back. But here is where your hard-won sovereignty stands as a beacon. If you hold your ground, if you refuse to succumb to the pull of those old compulsions, you will witness the shell of illusion shatter into fragments. What remains is not chaos, but the unshakable core of your true self. Beneath the swept away debris of outdated identities lies your absolute freedom, a freedom forged from the ashes of every automatic yes and every self-sacrificial expectation you once bore. In practical terms, this means consciously choosing your responses. When an old pattern lures you to overextend, pause and breathe. Feel the tension in your body and let your inner warrior whisper. You are not obligated to rescue. You are called to stand strong. Each moment you resist the hypnotic tug of past habit, you reinforce the fortress of sovereignty within you. No longer will you be the willow that bends until it breaks. You become the oak that sways but stands firm. As you navigate this storm, lean into practices that ground you. A morning ritual of gentle stretching and mindful breathing, journaling to witness the dance of light and shadow, seeking the counsel of a trusted friend or therapist who understands your journey. These anchors will help you remember who you are beneath the shifting tides. Gradually, the sense of displacement will give way to an expansive spaciousness. You will feel the difference between holding on to a crumbling truth and living from a liberated heart. The masks you have worn will lie discarded, and you will stand as you were always meant to, fully revealed, whole and utterly free. This is your final emergence. Not the end of turbulence, but the birth of your absolute sovereignty, guiding you and those you touch toward the light beyond the storm. This path is not a final destination, but a spiral journey, climbing to new heights, descending into deeper depths, and then rising even higher. Each time you re-enter the darkness of your psyche, you are not set back, you are forged more profoundly. In this spiraling process, shadow is not your adversary, but your most honest guide. It illuminates where you remain tethered to the past, where you fear loss, where you crave validation, where your old wounding still exerts its pull. When you face these fears head on, the fear of abandonment, the fear of worthlessness, you begin to dissolve the misguided power you once held over others through neediness and overgiving. You learn to feel because you choose to, not because you are compelled by an internal void. You learn to love deeply without the compulsive drive to rescue at all costs. You learn to say no without guilt, honoring your boundaries as an act of self-respect. Each small decision aligned with your inner truth becomes another brick in the fortress of your sovereignty. Over time, this practice solidifies into habit. You no longer dread conflict because you have learned that disagreements need not fracture your being. You stand firm in your integrity, voicing your truth even when the room trembles in the wake of your words. In doing so, you craft an authentic self, no longer a chameleon shaped by the need to be beloved, but a person at home in your own skin, anchored by the freedom to be exactly who you are. And so the empath transcends the image of fragile sensitivity to become a spiritual warrior, flexible yet unbreakable, profoundly feeling yet not overwhelmed. You can sense the subtlest currents of emotion, yet you remain buoyant on the surface. You can love fiercely without losing yourself in another's pain. You become the lighthouse for those adrift in darkness, showing by your very existence that inner truth and strength can coexist in harmony. This is the true triumph of the empath warrior, the sacred union of vulnerability and power, of boundaries and compassion. The journey never truly ends. It only unfolds ever more expansively, rippling outward in concentric circles. Each turn of the spiral brings you closer to the fullness of your own spirit, and in turn gently beckons others to step onto the path. In the end, your life becomes both map and guide, a living testament that the soul's greatest victory lies in embracing every shade of its being and lighting the way for those who follow. In today's video, you've been invited on a journey of profound inner transformation, one that honors the full spectrum of your empathic gifts and human vulnerabilities. By exploring the alchemy of shadow work, boundary setting, and sovereign selfhood, you've gained concrete tools to stand strong in your compassion without being consumed by it. You've discovered how to interpret recurring dreams as messages from your unconscious, to face your deepest fears as gateways to untapped power, and to wield the sword of healthy boundaries as a means of true protection, not aggression. As you carry these insights forward, you will no longer mistake your sensitivity for weakness. Instead, you will recognize it as a finely tuned instrument guiding you to hear unspoken truths, to offer presence rather than rescue, and to co-create healing in every relationship. You will understand that every tear you once shed, every moment of overwhelm in the tide of collective emotion was an invitation to deepen your roots and strengthen your resolve. Each no you speak cultivates your authority. Each act of compassionate witnessing rebuilds the bridge between your inner world and the world beyond. The message of this video is simple yet transformative. True healing and empowerment arise when we embrace both our light and our darkness, weaving them into an unbreakable tapestry of authenticity. By integrating your wounds into your wisdom, you become not only a survivor, but a guide, a living testament to the possibility of rising from any adversity. As you step out of this space, may you walk with renewed confidence in your empathic abilities, courage in your sovereignty, and compassion that uplifts without depleting. This is your calling and your gift to light the way for others, one sovereign step at a time.